It's been over a decade at this point that streaming platforms have taken over the music industry, and a lot of us have become suspicious of Billboard chart placements, of streams, and of different statistics surrounding the music industry and how they're manufactured. And now all of this has been confirmed at this point. What's really interesting is this stat that comes to us from BeatDAP, which is an audit and fraud detection software for music labels and streaming services. And they estimate that at least 10% of global music streaming activity is fraudulent, leading to $2 billion worth of misallocated annual revenues. So, of course, in this video, guys, we're going to be addressing how the numbers do lie. And how do you feel about that stat?
Who's rinsing? Who's taking the money to the cleaners? Let's know where's that $2 billion? No one knows. Yep. If anyone has the bag, let us know. But regardless, though, I think, especially now in 2026, there is a larger demand from the music community just for transparency, right? Because we've gone now since the early 2010s, at least as music consumers, we've been using these apps. We've been the ones that have been paying for these services. We're the ones that are paying attention to the Billboard charts. We're the ones that are talking about all of the major first week sales. And, this hit the 1 billion stream club. So I feel like as if for me, especially this year, I could give less of a fuck now. You know what? Yeah. And I kind of always knew it, right? You kind of always know that Santa Claus isn't real. But it sucks when you're like maybe 10 years old and your dad comes up to you and he tells you, listen, bro, it's over.
100%.
It was me that was putting the gifts underneath the Christmas tree. So let me ask you this, right? Because we've done a lot of content on statistics. We've been covering first week sales since the inception of the podcast. Now that it's been confirmed and we kind of really understood it in 2025, how do you kind of look at this information in 2026? Do you take it with a grain of salt? Because even with what happened with this new 21 Savage album, I feel like a lot of people in the community are left with a bad, sour taste in their mouth, bro.
Yeah, I feel like you do have to take these numbers with a grain of salt. I don't think that they're all completely inaccurate, but I do think that when I'm looking at a first week sale figure in 2026, I couldn't give less of a fuck, bro. And it's sad because a lot of people still do. And once these numbers come out, you have academics and you have all these other blogs starting narratives about like, oh, fuck, this rapper fell off because they only sold 40K first week. But now, what does 40K first week even mean? Maybe that artist only sold 20,000 first week. Maybe they only sold 30,000 first week. And that's something I want to get into a bit later on about how we need to stop putting so much importance on the first week numbers and actually look at catalog consumption when we're looking at the success of artists. But before we get into all of that, I do want to address some specific examples just because in this current climate, bro, it's more evident than ever that not only are a couple of artists and artist camps and labels involved in this major scandal in the industry, it seems like it's almost every camp, every label. And again, we're not making the claims that this is the truth and every single label is 100% involved, but that's just the way that it seems because it's more prevalent than ever, right? We go back to just last year and you had obviously the situation between Drake and UMG where he made the claim that UMG had bought the streams for Not Like Us to boost it to, go number one, obviously, and be inflated to the public. Then, similarly, you had a similar situation in 2026 now with this class action lawsuit that's being filed against Drake and Aiden Ross, where the plaintiffs are alleging that Drake is using Stake to transfer money to one of these botters who is pumping up the streams for Drake. And you also have Drake calling Spotify botify.
It's the big mess.
It's a huge fucking mess.
And you know what's interesting? I feel like some artists might not even be aware that their streams are being botted, right? Because if you go back to 2019, if you look at the gentleman Chad Focus, who was a musician and computer engineer, he had done an interview with Vice, and this is what he had to say about J. Cole's lyrics on A Lot. How many faking these streams? Obviously, the iconic lyrics off of A Lot that features 21 Savage, massive hit. And, they said getting the plays from the machine. So basically asking how many of these streams are being manufactured by robots. I can see behind the smoke and mirrors, guys really as big as they seem. Well, Chad claims that J. Cole is a part of that system and he doesn't even know it. He claims the major labels are running these streaming farms and setups that the industry is ran by a machine. And not only that, but if you guys want to go down all of the Reddit rabbit holes, you'll find full of pictures and videos of these farm streams out in China, bro. Like,
yeah, it's
dude,
like these warehouses with like a million fucking phones all hooked up,
and there's
these songs playing on loop.
Well, for example, at least a couple of people that I know of, and I won't name them by name, but they work at labels, and they've explained to me that anyone has access to this, right? It's not even the majors. It's a lot of the indie labels as well, and they feel like they need to compete now because if you're not going to get that backdoor Spotify placement for the top of, let's say, Rap Caviar, well, what am I going to do with my indie artists, right? Or let's say for TikTok, it doesn't stop there. I had gotten information that even, let's say, your trending sounds on TikTok, all you have to do is, bam, let me get in contact with one of these TikTok farms out in China, and bro, my shit's going to be on the next For You page, right?
Absolutely.
So now how do you even know what's really trending and what's not? It all feels like it's being forced down our throat, and I feel like it's kind of ruining the mainstream of music, right? Because it's not the quality thing. Like, this does not affect the quality of music, at least in my opinion, or what I go listen to. But I feel like there was a novelty factor to being like, oh shit, like this is a mega album. This is doing this because of this. Now it's all fucking backdoor ping. But that raises a question. Has it always kind of been this way and now it's just kind of getting exposed, right? Is it just because now we have access to the internet? Was this going on in the 2000s in some sort of other medium?
It was going on in other ways, right? Like payola's been around for the longest time, and we know that especially back in the 90s and 2000s, like radio play meant everything, especially when it came to generating these numbers. So there's always been, statistic manipulation in music. I just feel like now it's a fucking jungle, bro. And I think that there's so many more avenues for artists and labels to go down in order to inflate these fucking numbers. And what's sad too is that I feel like you were saying, artists and labels are probably looking at this where it's like, yo, this is what the game has become. If we don't align, we're just going to fall back and we're not going to be able to compete. Like, picture yourself being one of these artists or part of this artist team where it's like, if we want to have that security of public perception and that security of like dominance, if you want to maintain your number one spot, why not go down this path and try to fool the public? Because that's another thing. We're going to get into some examples like 21 Savage and Young Thug, but think about all the other artists who've done this and the internet just hasn't caught on.
And I feel like the rap genre has been sort of like the
scapegoat?
I wouldn't say it's the scapegoat because that means like, oh, well, everyone's putting the blame on the genre. Well, there's a lot of rappers that have been definitely frauding their stuff, or should I say the labels that directly are in business. But it seems
like it is mostly hip-hop artists that are in the headlines for this kind of stuff.
Absolutely, but that's kind of always been a thing, right? Like any industry scandal always gets tied into hip-hop. I just wonder how many streams are being farmed for pop artists, for country artists, right? Like, it must be everywhere. But regardless, though, going back sort of to the conversation about, where do we go from here with all of this as a consumer, I mean, I just never gave a fuck, bro. And I will continue not to give a fuck because at the same time, like, it does not dictate the quality for me. And it's interesting because you had included a couple of graphics on our sheet here just about the actual importance of first week sales and just sort of like the entire thing of, are we really falling for this hype, right?
And that's what's really interesting. Shout out to Nathan McCartney, who runs this newsletter called The Bag, and he put together these sick graphics that you guys are going to be able to see. So the goal of this newsletter that he made was to show the lack of importance on first week sales number and how it's really catalog consumption over time that matters. So what he did, he compared 5 different projects, and he wanted to show how some of them peaked in their first week and how others built momentum over time. So I want to look specifically at Jack Boys 2 by Travis and Jack Boys in comparison to I Hope You're Happy by Big X The Plug. All right. So Jack Boys 2, first week sold 251,000 copies, and that was by the end of October 2025. And it had total sales of 453,000 units by October. It had a growth rate of only 80%. Then you look at I Hope You're Happy by Big X The Plug. This sold 44K units, which everybody called a fucking flop like they'll usually do when it's under 50K. By the end of October 2025, total sales of 377,000. And it came out a month after JB2. It had a growth rate of 752%.
That is ridiculous.
Another crazy example, looking at Drake's first week sales versus his total sales. Obviously, Drake does insane first week numbers. But when you look at, in comparison to the total sales, it makes up just a fraction, bro. Look at Take Care. Sold 631,000 units first week, went on to sell over 11 million units. The first week sales represent a mere 5% of the total sales. Look at this next graphic, Ant. This is interesting because Future Nostalgia by Dua Lipa, one of the biggest pop stars, only did fucking 66K units first week, went on to sell 5 million. The most shocking one, though, If I Know Me by Morgan Wallen, brother. So 2,000 units first week, went on to sell 5 million units over the years. And what's interesting, too, is that I remember a conversation we had in 2024 with Corday during our interview. And he was talking about how he really doesn't give a fuck about first week numbers. And he usually doesn't perform that well within his first weeks. And that's true if you look at something like The Lost Boy, right? That album sold about 25,000 copies first week.
Yeah.
You look at the album now, it's about to be certified gold. It's sold 500,000 fucking units.
Well, there's a couple of other rappers that had this kind of momentum according to the graphic. Like example, The Voice by Dirk, right? We know that to be a huge album. It put up 23,000 copies first week. Goes on now to be double platinum with a total sales of 2.1 million.
Imagine that, though. Imagine being a rapper, selling 23,000 units, and having all these different blogs and all these different influencers call you a failure, bro. That's what a lot of these artists have to deal with. And again, that's why they feel the need to boost their fucking streams, is to save face. That's what's really sad and pathetic about just the state of the industry right now.
That's it, right? And even looking at Gunna with DS Forever, there was the whole thing with the leaked calls from jail with Young Thug, and he admitted to botting streams for Gunna's DS Forever to compete with The Weeknd's album Dawn FM. And he said that he paid $50,000 for streams to help Gunna's DS Forever debut at number 1 on the Billboard 200 chart. So now you have like the golden standard of sales, right? It's always been Billboard. It's a huge conglomerate. It's a massive fucking, I don't even know what to call it at this point, right? Like, especially with their deal with Nielsen, like if it's supposed to be so secure, how is everyone botting this? And you have Thug coming out and saying, well, that conversation was not supposed to be released, but he said, hey, I could pump in $50,000 into this album, and now I'm competing with The Weeknd. $50,000,
and
bro.
think about how expensive it must be to actually bought these streams, because if you look at DS Forever, let's see how much it did first week. 50,000, let's say Gunna on his own probably moved at least 50K. That I would assume.
Right.
He probably moved at least 50K. This sold 150K first week. That means 50 grand maybe only gets you 100,000 units.
I don't even know, bro. I'm not even sure.
I know. I'm speculating. All I'm saying is that it's
here.
Crazy how much money is probably being spent to boost these numbers, bro. It's really fucking sad.
And he even said, you didn't honestly earn a number 1 album over the weekend, my boy. I paid for that shit. I never said anything to him. I never told him that. That's crazy, too, because it goes back to Chad Focus's point, where a lot of these artists probably don't even know that their sales are getting fucked.
That's it.
Right?
Like this case, Gunna probably didn't know, bro.
But that's what I'm trying to say. But imagine this. You're an artist and you're routing your tour, bro, or you're trying to drop this huge collaboration for new merchandise, and you're looking at your sales and like, dude, like, I think I could do some crazy damage, right? Because, man, I'm selling 150,000 copies first week. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And then you try to go on to do something crazy, and then after that it flops because most of your fan base is fucking bought it. Like, I think that's what's starting to get crazy, is that a lot of these people probably have phantom fans that they feel like are real, but they don't even know how to gauge what's really going on.
And the latest trend that I feel like we're seeing with a lot of artists, including a Young Thug, including a 21 Savage, who I want to go over that situation with the streams in a bit. A lot of these artists are doing everything they can to compete numbers-wise, whether it be getting a stacked feature list, whether it be trying to get a viral TikTok dance, whatever it is. They're doing everything they can except focus on the music, bro. If you want to organically move 100,000 units first week or whatever fucking goal you have, focus on the music. Make a good product.
But bro, you know what? Even if the good product doesn't sell well first week, like we had just gone through the example, right? You're going to see a significant growth over time by having real art that's probably going to move.
It's going to stand the test of time.
Absolutely. Or at least we hope so. And at least we hope they're not fucking botting all that shit. But
let's talk about 21.
This one was crazy, bro, because on December 19, 2025, Talk of the Charts came out on Twitter and spoke about what happened to the streets and how that album saw an over 300% increase in daily U.S. album hits. Units sold, between Monday and Wednesday, bro. So we're just gonna add like fucking 40K, bro, in a matter of 3 days.
Especially knowing that most consumption for new albums comes on obviously the night of release, but also the weekend that follows. You're telling me from Monday to Wednesday, there's an increase of 300% in streams, and that projections originally start at 40K first week and move to 90.
And you know what's crazy? Around that time too, all of a sudden we had that like fuck the streets movement that was heavily attached to the album, and now let's try to distract everyone with this, and now everyone's dude, it doesn't work anymore. And I feel like a lot of people are starting to clear the smoke. Like no one buys this shit anymore, and I feel like if the labels want to continue these schemes or whoever's running this, bro, you're gonna have to do a better job because people are smart, and you're gonna continue to get exposed.
You're gonna get caught out, just like 6ix9ine, who admitted that he had paid for his song "Trolls" with Nicki to go #1 on the Hot 100. He said that he was big on wanting to trash Billboard and Nielsen and expose to the world that you can actually buy hits.
I don't believe that.
And
I don't think he was big on trying to do that. I feel like he did it.
He did it and got caught and then kind of backpedaled. I get it. So what he said was that his label 10K Projects, which is under UMG, went through the process of buying that #1 or boosting the song in undisclosed ways. And that what was interesting is that the song ends up going #1 and then dropping off to number 34, which was the biggest drop off in Hot 100 history at that point. And I feel like, again, they need to find a way. If you're going to try to fool the public the way that you're doing, it needs to be more seamless, bro. It can't be this evident like we saw with 21, like we saw with 6ix9ine. I will say this. The Gunna one worked until Thug exposed it. Nobody really had any idea.
Because you would assume that Gunna sells those numbers, right?
Especially with the P-Power song that was added featuring Drake shortly after the release. Like, there was a lot of marketing and a lot of just good work that was put into selling that album.
Let's talk about YouTube, bro.
Let's talk about YouTube.
So yeah, YouTube pulls out of Billboard tracking. This was massive news in a blog article that YouTube put out on December 17, 2025. YouTube says that it intends to withdraw its streaming data from all of Billboard's charts effective of January 16th. We're coming up on that date very shortly, actually. We're right there.
We are.
So how do you feel about that, bro? That now
at the time of this recording, by the way, it's probably going to be past the date at the point it comes out. It's interesting. I just think that it's another signal to us, the fans, stop giving a fuck about these first week numbers and these Billboard numbers in general, just because now they become even less accurate. At this point, it's like YouTube for music consumption is such a major giant in the industry, and now this won't even be factored in. What do you want me to do?
Yeah, at that point, just go to the Spotify streams and just watch those.
The numbers are lying.
Yeah, because they're going to be accounting for the majority of it. And I think that it's going to be just an interesting landscape now for 2026 in streams, because under all of the posts that academics puts up, or all the podcasters that say, oh, well, this person flopped and they should end their career because they didn't do 500 million sales first week. Where do we go from here for discourse? Do you think it's completely cooked at this point?
I think it's cooked, bro. And I think that, this whole YouTube rule that they're putting in, it just reflects the idea that they are trying to be generous to the labels and to the artists, because now, instead of needing 1,000 paid / subscription on demand official audio and video streams or 2,500 ad supported streams, you only need 1,250 paid / subscription on demand streams or 3,750 ad supported streams to make up your album unit. So it's just going to be easier for the artists to look better to the public eye, but it's too little too late, bro. Most people that are in the knowing of how the industry operates, the jig is up. The jig is up. Something else I want to talk about is this situation with Halsey. This is really interesting. So I'm going to quote Halsey during this interview she had with Zane Lowe. Mm-hmm. And he asked her, are you putting out an album soon? And she said this shit, I'm not allowed to. The Great Impersonator didn't perform the way they thought it would. It sold 100,000 copies first week. That's a pretty big first week. The tour is the highest selling tour of my career, but they want manic numbers. For reference, that was her biggest album, sold 200K first week. From me. I can't do that every time. It should be good enough that I do it once in a while. I'm not a pop star anymore, but I'm being compared to numbers, and people don't consider lateral. People that I don't consider lateral to me. This is crazy, bro, because this just shows us how so many artists are maybe even forced to sacrifice their art for commerce, bro.
That's it. And it always goes back to the artist, right? Because we often look at the artist and say, oh, well, this person went pop, or oh, this person tried to have hits. At the same time, is it really the artist's fault, or is it the pressure that they're getting from the back end of the business? But I think this can maybe work in the future for them, because if people put less and less importance on sale numbers, which is obviously frauded and means nothing at this point, well, now what's the excuse? You don't even have to. The PR is not involved, and we could all move on from this. So my biggest takeaway from this situation, ladies and gentlemen, as I said at the beginning, I don't give a fuck. Give me good music. That is what I'm here for. If you guys want to support your artists, buy their merchandise. Maybe subscribe to a premium plan that they have for premium content. Go to their tours. Do real life community shit. And I feel like, especially for the artists, focus on that type of stuff. Focus on making good art, and focus on building a core community that's going to show up for your music and support you because you support them with good music. And I think that's what's important.
Also, fuck the social proof, you know? Like, there has been studies that have shown that when people see that songs have more downloads or streams than others, they're more inclined to want to listen to those songs because there's that proof that other people like them and they're popular. But fuck all that, bro. Enjoy what you want to enjoy. And at the end of the day, do not succumb to the pressures. I'm speaking to the artists now. Do not succumb to the pressures of the labels. Get out of the situation if you can. Do not succumb to the pressure of the blogs. Fuck all that. Focus on your own art and creativity. That's what matters the most. And that's how we'll leave you off with this episode, guys. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. What do you make out of the situation? And do you believe any of these numbers in 2026?